Order, order in the Grand Chamber. Supreme Commander Zarkax's thunderous voice echoed through the crystalline dome of the Galactic Council, but even his commanding presence couldn't quell the chaos erupting around me. As I, Kriltak, third speaker of the Drachnid Confederation, watched my fellow representatives descend into what humans would call a madhouse, I couldn't help but feel a mix of amusement and dread. This is preposterous. General Vexathor slammed his armored appendage against the hovering platform, causing it to wobble dangerously. The Lumini have maintained neutrality for over 10,000 cycles. They're peaceful to the point of absurdity. Why would they possibly? Because we were wrong. My words cut through the chamber like a plasma blade, bringing an unexpected silence. Hundreds of compound eyes, optical sensors, and various sensory organs turned toward my platform. We were catastrophically, embarrassingly wrong about the humans. A bitter laugh escaped my primary breathing vent. To think, just 3 solar cycles ago, we dismissed these bipedal creatures as barely worth our notice. Now they had brought the mighty coalition to its knees, and not through brute force or superior technology, but through something none of us had anticipated. Speaker Kriltak, Supreme Commander Zarkax's voice carried a warning tone. Choose your next words carefully. Oh, I'll be careful, Supreme Commander. Careful like we should have been when we first encountered Earth. Careful like we should have been before dismissing their diplomatic overtures. Careful like we should have been before Captain Rodriguez blew up our supposedly impenetrable defense station with nothing but mining ships and improvised weapons. The chamber erupted again, but I pressed on, my secondary hearts pumping with growing intensity. You want to know why the Lumini sided with humanity? Look around this chamber. Look at what we've become. We call ourselves the Coalition of Advanced Species, yet we've forgotten the very principles that allowed us to advance in the first place. Holographic displays flickered throughout the chamber, showing footage from the recent battles. Human ships, crude by our standards, dancing through our defense grids with impossible precision. And alongside them, the sleek organic vessels of the Lumini, their crystalline structures pulsing with colors we'd never seen them display before. The humans didn't convince the Lumini to fight, I continued, my voice dropping to what humans would call a whisper, yet carrying to every corner of the chamber. They convinced them to think, to question, to look beyond their peaceful nature and recognize that sometimes preserving peace requires standing against those who would destroy it. General Vexathor's scales had taken on a sickly purple hue. Are you suggesting that we, the Coalition, are the aggressors in this conflict? I'm not suggesting anything, General. I'm stating it as fact. We demanded their submission. We threatened their worlds. We assumed their technological inferiority meant they were inferior in all ways. And now? I gestured to the latest battle footage, where a single human ship, the NSS Nikolai Petrov, backed by 2 Lumini vessels, was holding off an entire Coalition battle group. The human captain's voice crackled through the chamber's audio system, their laughter mixing with tactical commands in a way that made several council members' appendages twitch uncomfortably. Now we face not just humanity's ingenuity and determination, but the Lumini's ancient wisdom and power. A power they never showed us because they never needed to. A power they're now teaching humanity to harness. Supreme Commander Zarkax raised all 4 of his upper limbs, a gesture of ultimate authority that demanded silence. What would you have us do, Speaker Kriltak? Surrender to these primitives? I looked around the chamber one final time, taking in the faces of species that had ruled the galaxy for millennia. Species that had grown complacent, arrogant, and now fearful. No, Supreme Commander, I would have us learn from them, before it's too late. Because if there's one thing we've learned about humans, it's that they're surprisingly forgiving to former enemies. But if we continue this path, well, I wouldn't want to bet against a species that managed to make the Lumini abandon 10,000 cycles of neutrality. Would you? The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the continued transmission of human laughter and Lumini battle songs from the holographic displays. The war wasn't over, but in that moment, every being in the chamber knew everything had changed. Looking back, The day we discovered Earth stands as a monument to coalition arrogance. Our survey vessel, the Grand Seeker, was doing what coalition ships do best, poking their sensors where they didn't belong. Captain Nex Ruvik, a Zentaran with too many tentacles and not enough sense, had been searching for new mining prospects in what we considered empty space. "Another primitive civilization," he reported, his tentacles waving dismissively at the holographic display of Earth. "Though I must say, they're making quite a mess of their orbital space. Fascinating how they haven't destroyed themselves yet." I remember sitting in the council chamber during that first report, my scales itching with what I now recognize as premonition. The other representatives were barely paying attention. The Mechani delegates were running probability calculations about resource extraction. The Vorsik were discussing trade routes through their mandibles, and the Zentarans were doing that annoying thing where they pretend to be supremely enlightened about everything. Supreme Commander Zarkax, younger then but just as pompous, simply waved 2 of his 4 primary limbs. "Add them to the observation list. Standard protocol for pre-FTL species." That should have been that. But then some brilliant mind in our intelligence division actually started reading their broadcast signals. "Sir," the analyst reported, her bioluminescent patches flashing with excitement. "They're discussing plans for their first faster-than-light drive." Now that got everyone's attention. The Mechani representative's probability engines actually stuttered, something I'd never seen before. The Vorsik stopped mid-mandible click. Even the Zentaran's tentacles went still. "Impossible," declared High Theorist Mika 9, her metallic frame vibrating with indignation. "Our calculations indicate at least another 3 centuries before they could achieve such technology. Their current technological level is barely Category 3. Oh, how I wish I'd recorded that moment. Because 6 months later, humanity didn't just achieve FTL travel, they did it without following any of the standard development paths. The Mechani nearly blew their circuits trying to understand how humans had simply skipped several steps they considered essential. "They're using what?" Supreme Commander Zarkax's confusion made all 4 of his eyes blink out of sync, a sight that still brings me joy in my quieter moments. "They call it the Anderson-Chen Drive," reported the thoroughly flustered analyst. It's not supposed to work that way. They're breaking at least 3 fundamental laws of physics." "Correction," interrupted High Theorist Mika 9. "They're breaking our understanding of 3 fundamental laws of physics." That's when the political posturing began. The Vorsik, always thinking about profit, wanted to establish immediate trade relations. The Zentarans suggested we should guide these young ones toward proper civilization. The Mechani were still trying to make their probability engines accept reality, but it was General Vexithor who set us on our disastrous course. "They're dangerous," he declared, his warrior caste markings glowing with agitation. "Look at their history. Look at their entertainment media. These humans are violent, unpredictable, and now they have FTL capability. We cannot allow them to roam freely among the stars." I remember watching their global information network, trying to understand these creatures. Their entertainment did indeed show an obsession with conflict, but also with peace, love, and something they called pizza, which I still don't quite understand but apparently was worth starting several wars over. "They're divided," noted Ambassador Lux of the Zentarans, her tentacles weaving patterns of concern. "Thousands of different nations, cultures, languages. They can't even agree on whether their frozen water desserts should be called ice cream or gelato. How could they possibly pose a threat to the coalition?" The coalition's official first contact team was a joke. We sent the most condescending group of representatives possible, led by none other than Captain Ruvik himself. The humans, to their credit, remained diplomatically polite, even when Ruvik suggested they might want to voluntarily submit to coalition guidance for only a few centuries. Their response came from their newly formed United Earth government. Ambassador Maya Chen stood before the coalition delegation and delivered what would become known as the thanks but no thanks speech. The name lacks gravity, but its content, pure diplomatic plasma fire wrapped in politeness. "We appreciate your generous offer of guidance," she said, smiling in that mysterious way humans have. "But we believe we'll find our own path among the stars. We look forward to peaceful cooperation between equals. Equals? The word caused multiple diplomatic incidents. The Zentarans dropped their pretense of enlightenment and started ranting about proper galactic hierarchy. The Vorsic began calculating how to monopolize human trade by force. The Makani just kept crashing their probability engines. Only the Lumini, watching silently from their nebula gardens, seemed unperturbed. But then, they always seemed unperturbed. That's what made their eventual choice so shocking. I remember asking my human counterpart, years later, what they thought of us during those first meetings. Ambassador Chen laughed, that terrible, wonderful human laugh that still makes coalition members nervous. "We thought you were all so adorably sure of yourselves," she said. Like a bunch of old professors suddenly realizing their kindergarten students had solved an equation they'd been struggling with for years. I didn't understand the reference then. I do now. And she was right. We weren't ready for humans. We weren't ready for their adaptability, their creativity, or their knack for making friends in the most unexpected places. But most of all, we weren't ready for their ability to make even the most peaceful species in the galaxy decide that some things are worth fighting for. "Send in the ultimatum," ordered Supreme Commander Zarkax. In my memory, that moment always plays in slow motion. The point where we crossed from arrogance into pure stupidity. The Coalition's demands were laughably extreme. Complete disarmament of Earth's military forces, supervised development of all technologies, Coalition oversight of all off-world colonies, and my personal favorite, a requirement that humans ask permission before making any major scientific breakthroughs. Ambassador Chen's response was broadcast across every Coalition frequency. She stood at the podium, that same serene smile on her face, and said just 6 words. "Thank you for such a clear answer." None of us understood what she meant. Not then. "They're mobilizing their civilian ships," reported General Vexithor 3 days later. He sounded almost amused. "Converting cargo haulers and mining vessels into combat ships. How quaint." I remember watching the humans evacuate their orbital stations, not in panic, but with practiced precision. Later we learned they'd been running drills for this scenario since their first FTL flight. As Captain Rodriguez would tell me years later, just because we hoped for the best didn't mean we weren't preparing for the worst. The Coalition's military response was overwhelming, on paper. 3 battle fleets led by our most advanced dreadnoughts. Enough firepower to reduce Earth's surface to slag. General Vexithor was practically glowing with anticipated victory. That's when the Lumini showed up. Now you have to understand something about the Lumini. Picture the most peaceful beings you can imagine, then make them even more peaceful. Their entire civilization was built around the principle of nonviolence. They lived in their nebula gardens, creating art that made hardened warriors weep and music that could calm raging plasma storms. They hadn't involved themselves in galactic politics for 10,000 cycles. Not during the Makani uprising, not during the Vorsic trade wars, not even during the Great Schism that created the Coalition. So when a Lumini ship appeared in the middle of our war fleet, everyone stopped. Just stopped. "This is High Speaker Aura of the Lumini," came the transmission. Their voice had that musical quality all Lumini share, but there was something else in it. Something none of us had ever heard from a Lumini before. Steel. "We have been watching," they continued. "We have been learning. We have made our choice." General Vexithor, demonstrating his usual diplomatic grace, demanded they leave the military engagement zone. The Lumini response was unprecedented. They laughed. The sound shocked everyone into silence. Lumini didn't laugh. They contemplated, they observed, they created beauty, but they didn't laugh. "Tell me, General," High Speaker Aura asked, "have you ever wondered why we maintain our neutrality?" Before anyone could respond, more Lumini ships emerged from what we'd thought was empty space. Hundreds of them. Their crystalline hulls pulsing with colors we'd never seen them use before. "Not because we are weak," they continued. "Not because we are afraid. We maintain neutrality because we understand the terrible responsibility that comes with power. We choose peace not from necessity, but from wisdom." That's when we noticed human ships appearing alongside the Lumini vessels. Not the crude warships we'd expected, but elegant hybrid designs combining human ingenuity with Lumini crystalline technology. The humans, High Speaker Aura explained, reminded us of something we had forgotten. Sometimes maintaining peace requires standing against those who would destroy it. They did not ask us to fight. They asked us to teach, to share, to grow. Ambassador Chen's voice joined the transmission. We never wanted enemies. We wanted teachers, partners, friends. The coalition offered us submission wrapped in condescension. The Lumini offered us knowledge wrapped in respect. The human Lumini fleet moved into formation. It was beautiful, in a terrifying sort of way, like watching a solar storm and realizing you're about to be caught in it. This is your final warning, Ambassador Chen announced. The coalition can choose to open real diplomatic relations, as equals, or learn a very costly lesson about underestimating both humanity's determination and the Lumini's resolve. General Vex Thor, his warrior markings now pulsing with rage, did what any self-respecting coalition military leader would do. He ordered the attack. I still remember Supreme Commander Zarkax's expression as he watched the battle unfold. It was the look of someone realizing they had not only miscalculated, but had somehow been solving the wrong equation entirely. The humans and Lumini moved as one force. Human tactical brilliance combined with Lumini technology we'd never dreamed they possessed. It wasn't a battle. It was a dance. A terrible, beautiful dance that ended with the coalition's mighty battle fleet in ruins. As I watched our ships retreat in disarray, I couldn't help but appreciate the cosmic irony. We had worried that humanity's warlike nature would destabilize the galaxy. Instead, their diplomatic corps had managed to convince the galaxy's most peaceful species to take up arms. Though, as High Speaker Aura would later clarify, we didn't take up arms. We simply decided to stop pretending we never had them. The Lumini had always been an enigma wrapped in a mystery, sealed with a puzzle, and tied with a ribbon of pure starlight. Their civilization predated the coalition by millennia. While we conquered and expanded, they created art. While we built warships, they cultivated nebula gardens that spawned new stars. You know what fascinates me most about humans? High Speaker Aura asked me during one of our later diplomatic meetings. They look at a star and see both its beauty and its potential. They write poetry about cosmic wonders while calculating how to harness their power. The Lumini's own history was one of constant evolution, not through conflict, but through understanding. Their ships weren't built. They were grown. Their weapons weren't forged. They were sung into existence. At least that's what we thought they were doing in their crystal cities and nebula gardens. We were wrong, so very wrong. We watched every species in the galaxy, High Speaker Aura explained, their crystalline forms shimming with colors that made my eyes hurt. We watched them rise, fight, fall, and rise again. We watched them form alliances, break them, and form new ones. We watched the coalition emerge, claiming to bring order, but really just imposing stagnation. Then came humanity. The Lumini watched as humans took their first steps into space. They watched as humans dreamed, failed, tried again, failed better, and kept pushing forward. They watched as humans fought among themselves, made peace, fought again, but always moved forward. Do you know what made humans different? High Speaker Aura asked the Coalition Council. They looked up at the stars and saw not resources to claim or territories to conquer, but mysteries to solve and wonders to share. The actual moment of the Lumini's decision came during what humans called the first contact coffee break. Ambassador Chen, frustrated with the coalition's posturing, had invited the Lumini observers to try something called a mocha latte. The humans offered us not tribute, not submission, not even formal alliance, High Speaker Aura recalled, their voice carrying that musical laugh that still made coalition members nervous. They offered us coffee and conversation. They asked about our art. They shared their music. They showed us cat videos. The coalition's intelligence agencies had spent centuries trying to understand Lumini technology. Humanity spent an afternoon sharing pictures of small furry animals and discussing the philosophical implications of free will while drinking caffeinated beverages. When the coalition threatened Earth, High Speaker Aura continued. They didn't beg for our help. They asked if we would teach them. Not how to fight, they already knew that. They asked us to teach them about stellar engineering, about crystal harmonics, about the songs that shape reality. The Coalition's shock wasn't just about the Lumini choosing sides. It was about discovering that the peaceful artists we'd dismissed for millennia had technology that made our most advanced weapons look like children's toys. We didn't maintain neutrality because we feared war, High Speaker Aura explained to the dumbfounded Coalition Council. We maintained neutrality because we had transcended it. But the humans, they showed us that sometimes refusing to act is itself an act of violence. The Human Lumini Alliance wasn't built on military necessity or political convenience. It was built on shared coffee, exchanged stories, and mutual fascination. The humans taught the Lumini about determination, about the beauty of imperfection, about the joy of trying something new just to see what would happen. Besides, Ambassador Chen added with that characteristic human grin, have you seen what happens when you introduce ancient, hyper-advanced crystal beings to human jazz? The jam sessions are literally stellar. The Coalition's military analysts tried to make sense of it. How had humanity managed to forge such a deep alliance in mere months? How had they unlocked Lumini technology that we'd failed to understand for centuries? The answer came from an unexpected source, a human child visiting the Lumini Nebula Gardens. They're not unlocking anything, the girl said, watching crystal ships dance through space. They're making music together. That's when we finally understood. The Lumini hadn't given humanity their technology. They'd shared their art, and humanity had shown them new ways to perform it. What we saw as weapons were actually instruments in a cosmic symphony. The Coalition sees the galaxy as something to be controlled, High Speaker Aura told me. Humanity sees it as something to be explored and celebrated. They don't want to master the dance. They want to learn new steps and create their own. The humans had managed what the Coalition had thought impossible. Not through force, not through diplomacy, not even through technology. They had done it by being themselves, curious, creative, and surprisingly good at making coffee. As Supreme Commander Zarkak said in his resignation speech, we feared humanity would bring chaos to the galactic order. Instead, they brought coffee and jazz to beings of living crystal, and somehow that was much, much worse for our plans. The Coalition's first attack was textbook perfect, which was precisely the problem. We had written the textbook, followed it religiously, and never considered that someone might have read ahead and drawn mustaches on all the important diagrams. Battle formations optimal, General Vexithor announced proudly. Victory probability calculated at 98.7%. The Mechani representatives nodded in agreement, their probability engines humming with satisfaction. 3 massive Coalition battle fleets moved into perfect attack formation, their weapons charged, their shields harmonized. 10,000 years of military doctrine made manifest in a display of overwhelming force. Then Captain Rodriguez laughed. The sound cut through every command channel, every tactical frequency. Not the nervous laugh of someone facing destruction, but the delighted chuckle of someone watching their opponent walk into an expertly laid trap. Thank you for being so predictable, she said. Maestro Aura, shall we begin the concert? That's when the space around our fleets began to sing. The Lumini ships, previously invisible to our sensors, revealed themselves not through standard decloaking procedures, but through music. Crystal harmonics rippled through space, turning the very vacuum into an impossible amphitheater. Our sensor operators screamed as their equipment overloaded, not with weapon signatures or shield frequencies, but with something their systems categorized as jazz in C minor with quantum characteristics. The human ships moved first, but not as individual vessels. They flowed like water, like a dance troupe that had rehearsed their performance for years instead of months. Mining lasers recalibrated to frequencies that made our shields resonate uncomfortably. Cargo tractors reached out with gravitational fingers, plucking at our formation like strings on an instrument. Impossible, General Vexithor sputtered. Their technology is inferior. Their ships are outdated. Their weapons are... Part of the melody, High Speaker Aura's voice joined the command channel. The Lumini ships pulsed with colors that hurt to look at, each crystal vessel becoming both instrument and musician in a symphony of destruction. The human Lumini combat doctrine defied every rule of space warfare we had ever written. Their ships moved in patterns that our tactical computers dismissed as suicidal, right until the moment those patterns turned our own carefully calculated maneuvers against us. Coalition dreadnoughts found themselves conducting an involuntary ballet, caught in overlapping fields of crystal harmonics and repurposed mining gravitics. Escort vessels spun helplessly, their crews dizzy but unharmed, as human ships darted through gaps in our formation that shouldn't have existed. "Would you like to know your actual mistake?" Captain Rodriguez asked, her voice carrying the same tone humans used when explaining a particularly clever joke. "You assumed that because we were less advanced, we had nothing to teach." A squadron of coalition cruisers fired their main weapons. The energy beams struck a wall of crystalline vessels, which absorbed the attacks and transformed them into pulses of light that painted the battlefield in impossible colors. "The Lumini taught us about crystal harmonics," Rodriguez continued. "We taught them about jazz improvisation. Turns out, the principles aren't that different." I watched from the command center as human mining ships used repurposed drilling lasers to cut precise patterns into space itself, creating refraction points for Lumini crystal beams. The combined effect turned our own ship's weapons energy against us like a mirror maze designed by a mad artist. "Break formation!" General Vexathor bellowed. "Regroup and—" "Oh no," Rodriguez interrupted. "You're not going anywhere. The concert isn't over yet." The Lumini ships began to pulse in sequence, each crystal vessel becoming a note in a chord that made reality hiccup. Human vessels danced through the gaps in spacetime, their inferior engines somehow perfectly calibrated to surf the waves of quantum probability that the Lumini were generating. Our mighty dreadnoughts, pride of the coalition fleet, found themselves conducting an impromptu performance of what humans would later call the dance of the sugar-plum failures. Their crews were fine, if slightly nauseous, but their dignity would never recover. "You see," High Speaker Aura explained, their voice carrying both amusement and genuine pleasure, "humans understand something you forgot long ago. The best music comes from collaboration, not competition. They didn't try to match our technology. They found ways to make their tools harmonize with ours." A human mining vessel, escorted by 3 Lumini crystal ships, demonstrated this principle by using its gravitational tethers to literally play a coalition battlecruiser like a percussion instrument. The resulting vibrations disabled the weapon systems of every ship in a 1,000-kilometer radius. "This isn't a battle," Captain Rodriguez announced. "This is a demonstration. Each of our civilizations had pieces of the puzzle. The Lumini understood the music of the spheres. We understood the importance of improvisation. Together, High Speaker Aura continued, we created something new. Not a weapon, but a performance. Not a war fleet, but an orchestra." The final movement of their symphony of battle reduced the coalition's mighty armada to a collection of intact but thoroughly incapacitated vessels, their crews alive but deeply confused about everything they thought they knew about physics, warfare, and musical theory. General Vexathor's last transmission before his command ship system succumbed to a particularly energetic rendition of what humans called bebop was simply, "This isn't fair." "Fair," Rodriguez replied. "No, it's not fair, it's jazz." As I watched the last of our ships drift helplessly in space, their engines humming an off-key accompaniment to the Lumini crystal harmonics, I couldn't help but appreciate the artistry of it all. The coalition had expected a war. Instead, we got a masterclass in interspecies cooperation and experimental music. "Don't worry," Rodriguez assured our defeated forces. "The effect is temporary, though you might find your ships occasionally playing human pop songs at random intervals for the next few weeks. We're still working out some bugs in the harmony matrix." The Coalition's War Council meeting following our defeat was the shortest in our history. Supreme Commander Zarkax simply walked in, played the battle recordings, and asked, "Any questions?" The silence was broken only by the faint sound of a coalition dreadnought, still in orbit, spontaneously broadcasting something humans called, "Never Gonna Give You Up." "Well," I said, standing before my fellow council members. I believe we've been thoroughly outplayed, both literally and figuratively. General Vexithor, his warrior markings distinctly faded, spoke up. But how? Their technology was inferior. Their ships were practically antiques. Their weapons weren't weapons at all, Ambassador Chen interrupted, entering the chamber alongside High Speaker Aura. Nobody had invited them. Nobody dared ask them to leave. You saw what you expected to see, High Speaker Aura added, their crystalline form rippling with amused colors. You saw primitive mining tools, outdated cargo haulers, and makeshift modifications. What you should have seen was innovation, adaptation, and harmony. The evidence was undeniable. The Coalition's mighty battle fleet had been defeated not by superior firepower, but by what humans called thinking outside the box, a concept that proved particularly effective when combined with Lumini crystal technology that could literally fold space into origami. The terms of peace are simple, Ambassador Chen announced. Equal recognition, free exchange of ideas, and mandatory cultural exchange programs. Cultural exchange? Supreme Commander Zarkax's 4 eyes blinked in confusion. Yes, High Speaker Aura confirmed. The humans believe and we agree that most conflicts arise from misunderstanding. Therefore, every coalition world will host both human and Lumini artists, scientists, and, they paused dramatically, jazz musicians. The horror on the council members' faces was palpable. Not at the prospect of defeat, we could handle defeat, but the idea of every coalition world being exposed to human music, human art, human innovation, combined with Lumini crystal harmonics. We've already scheduled the first concert, Ambassador Chen added cheerfully. A human Lumini fusion band called Crystal Method, not to be confused with the 20th Century Earth group. They're performing a piece called Symphony of Scientific Methods, with footnotes. Several council members fainted. The changes came swiftly after that. Human innovations spread through coalition space like a benevolent virus. Lumini crystal technology, once thought to be purely aesthetic, revealed itself to be the foundation of scientific principles we hadn't even begun to understand. Coffee shops opened on coalition worlds. Jazz clubs appeared in space stations. The Mechani discovered they had a particular aptitude for bebop. The Vorsik began incorporating human dance moves into their traditional combat training. But the real transformation wasn't in the technology or the culture. It was in the way we thought about advancement itself. You see, Captain Rodriguez explained to me over something called a cappuccino. The Lumini had mastered the art of working with the universe. We humans had mastered the art of trying things just to see what would happen, put them together. And you get mining lasers that can be used to play music across space-time, I finished, finally understanding. Exactly. Though that was actually an accident. We were trying to make a really big light show for a concert and somehow invented a new form of quantum communication. The coalition adapted because we had to. Our mighty military fleet was restructured, not disbanded. But now, alongside every warship, there flew human and Lumini vessels. Not as guards or minders, but as partners in what they called synchronized space-time performance art with defensive capabilities. High Speaker Aura summed it up best during the signing of the new Galactic Charter. The Coalition sought to prevent chaos by enforcing order. Humanity showed us that true harmony comes not from enforcing similarity, but from celebrating difference. Also, they make excellent coffee. Looking back now, as I prepare to retire from my position as third speaker, I can't help but laugh at our foolishness. We had thought ourselves the peak of civilization, the guardians of galactic order. We had dismissed humanity as primitive and the Lumini as purely decorative. Instead, humanity had shown us that progress comes not from careful adherence to established patterns, but from the willingness to try new combinations, to embrace apparent contradictions, to dance with the unknown. The Lumini had shown us that true power comes not from the ability to destroy, but from the wisdom to know when to act and the courage to change. Together, they had created something entirely new. A civilization where military vessels quote poetry during battle maneuvers, where scientific breakthroughs are accompanied by musical performances, where the lines between art and technology, between innovation and tradition, have blurred into something beautiful and strange. You know what your real mistake was? Ambassador Chen asked me recently. Underestimating you? No, she smiled, sliding another coffee across the table. You thought the galaxy needed to be controlled. We just wanted to jam with it. And so here we are. The coalition endures but transformed. Our mighty warships now host jazz clubs. Our military academies teach interpretive dance alongside tactical theory. And somewhere out there, human and Lumini ships dance among the stars, creating art that doubles as the most sophisticated defense system ever conceived. We tried to conquer the galaxy. They taught it how to sing.